The main advantage of blockchain obviously is the ledger is immutable if it's
Mhm.
decentralized enough. So do
Yeah.
you think that this might solve the issue, for example, with the corruption in the system for various aspects of the system, either political or financial? Or how do you think it might help the system, or be compatible, or at least provide an alternative to the current system?
Yeah, so I think it's a technology kind of like a lock where like the lock itself can't do that much protection, but it's like, okay, if you have social structures where you have a key and you have people who know who to trust with the key and develop trust within a small group of people who have that key, that can protect against power structures. And for a while, I was thinking a lot about anti-corruption blockchains and like what would that actually look like? Because I do think we need systems of gathering information about the nature of corruption from inside systems, like people who can actually see, wait a second, from my little place inside the system, there's something that's not quite right. But every person who's in that situation is in a prisoner's dilemma where you speak up and there's all these consequences. So a lot of people don't speak up. So the question is, could blockchain enable something that would allow more of those people to speak up by changing the incentives, making it a little bit safer for people to do that?
Hi everyone. Today we have an esteemed guest with us. Ashley, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Ashley Hodgson. I'm an economics professor at St. Olaf College, and my interests are all over the place. I have a YouTube channel called The New Enlightenment with Ashley, but I have taught a course on blockchain economics. I'm very interested in sort of power structures and this moment in history as it relates to just sort of the restructuring of society and the way technology plays in with that.
Perfect. So if we can maybe talk today about blockchain, how do you see this technology in terms of improving society, or its advantages and disadvantages in general?
Yeah, I kind of see blockchain as the immutable ledger part of that can be integrated into different types of systems in the future. And I think we don't yet have exactly what that technology will look like in its final manifestation. And there's a lot of sort of uses of blockchain in terms of misleading ways that it seems like it might protect people when it doesn't. And so there's this kind of back end, front end problem with blockchain where you've got these developers who are developing these tools and they might know what it protects and what it doesn't protect in terms of privacy or in terms of information that is that is truly immutable and not. But for like an end user who doesn't understand the back end to trust that, they need a little bit more infrastructure. So I'm not using it, so I haven't thought about how to explain this without
So,
getting
so you think that, for example, maybe this technology needs the front end needs to be the user-facing interface needs to be more insightful into what's happening in the background, so the users will understand and trust it?
sort of. I think there's going to need to be institutional structures that are a mixture of the technology and like people who really understand how the technology works and what its strengths and weaknesses are and how it can be integrated, but also the social aspect of that where like I would like to be able to say, okay, this is a group of people that I trust and it's small enough and there's incentives like social incentives within the group enough that I trust that group to like have my best interest at heart. Tell me what the technology is doing and not doing and to be transparent about that. And I think the social element and the social incentives there are going to have to be aligned with the technology to create infrastructures in the future that like protect against some of the power structures that are currently exercising too much power.
The main advantage of blockchain obviously is the ledger is immutable if it's
Mhm.
decentralized enough. So do
Yeah.
you think that this might solve the issue, for example, with the corruption in the system for various aspects of the system, either political or financial? Or how do you think it might help the system, or be compatible, or at least provide an alternative to the current system?
Yeah, so I think it's a technology kind of like a lock where like the lock itself can't do that much protection, but it's like, okay, if you have social structures where you have a key and you have people who know who to trust with the key and develop trust within a small group of people who have that key, that can protect against power structures. And for a while, I was thinking a lot about anti-corruption blockchains and like what would that actually look like? Because I do think we need systems of gathering information about the nature of corruption from inside systems, like people who can actually see, wait a second, from my little place inside the system, there's something that's not quite right. But every person who's in that situation is in a prisoner's dilemma where you speak up and there's all these consequences. So a lot of people don't speak up. So the question is, could blockchain enable something that would allow more of those people to speak up by changing the incentives, making it a little bit safer for people to do that? And
So
I think it could, yeah.
seen like new social media is coming up that's based on blockchain, like for example Audacity and I'm sorry, not Audacity, Odyssey, and also like maybe Nostr, and all this social media is based on blockchain, making it censorship resistant. Maybe this will be like also like mix up the power structure, or how is it going to impact this?
Yeah, there's been a number of projects like you're talking about, Odyssey and whatnot. I think the censorship resistant aspect is one piece of the equation, but for that technology to actually work on a broader scale, you need some other things about it that will like attract a more like a broader base of people to it, and that will build in trust for different groups who might not currently trust each of those particular systems.
But people already trust the centralized systems. So what do you think is going to be the thing that tips the scale over and allows people to trust these decentralized systems more?
Did you say people already trust centralized systems,
Yeah, I
or
mean, in a way, like if you compare it, like for example, they are using the system, right? Like let's say, for example, Instagram or something like that. They are using these systems, so they trust that, for example, when they wake up tomorrow, the system will still be there. They will still have their account. They will still be able to communicate. Obviously, some people still like suspicious about the system, but most of the people are trusting in the system. Even if they say otherwise, they still trust in the system. So, do you think that this will shift, or it will morph together with the blockchain technology, or what do you think? What do you see the prospects of this?
I think there is distortion in information. I think there's sort of a thumb on the scale aspect of the centralized parties that control that information. And I think there could come a moment when people start to notice or start to realize, wait a second, if I had more control over the algorithms that showed me stuff, or the algorithms that perhaps showed me what other people are seeing, that could become more important, especially as artificial intelligence starts to come in and act in certain ways. I could see a moment when people want an alternative in terms of how information is processed to them.
So maybe let's go on a tangent on the AI. So do you think that maybe
This episode is sponsored by DegreeSign.
CoinExams platform was purpose-built by DegreeSign to be one of the best-performing platforms in the crypto space.
DegreeSign is an agency developing web products with a long experience of building products from scratch for maximum performance and stability.
Start today. Just email make@degreesign.com.
like the AI currently, is it going to like in terms of this aspect of the power structure and like the democracy, is it going to be a benefit, or like in general, like what do you see the project? Obviously, it can be either, like it can be beneficial to the society or can have like some issues, like with especially if a centralized power is controlling it. But what do you see the prospect like right now? Is it like, because like for example, some people like Elon Musk, they are seem a bit pessimistic about it. Some people like Sam Altman and this group of people, they see it like very positive, in a very positive light. So what do you think is actually the projection from your point of view? Like, is it going to be positive or negative for society?
I mean, I don't think I think there's enough factors in the air that I wouldn't be able to say, could it be positive or negative? I think it could be positive, could be negative, and it depends.
So we're still like unsure still about this technology. Like it's not, like for example, the internet right now, it's net positive, right? Like nobody can say like it's net negative, because like it enables work, it enables, like it's really positive for humanity in a lot of aspects. But AI still, so you're still unsure about AI, is it?
So I think it's not that the way I would describe it is I think AI and humans and like sort of the whole human race and how we wield AI. It's a two-way game between them. So I think whether AI is positive or negative depends on essentially the chess moves of both the powerful players in the game of AI, but also the population and the population's trust relationship with AI and whatnot. So I would say it's not that I'm inherently positive or negative about AI. It's that I think some of the moves that will determine that interaction between AI and the human race and AI and power structures, those moves have not all been made yet. And those moves will be essential in nudging it toward the positive or the negative.
So going back to blockchain, so do you think that maybe also like the digital ID or like that, is it positive or negative, or what is your perspective?
Digital ID.
Yes.
Um,
You looked into it, or?
Well, I've thought a little bit about it, yeah. I mean, it's another one of these things where I think that is a technology that could be used for good or for evil. And I think if you have the existing power structures that dominate the way that is used, I think it will ultimately be evil. But I also think if we are trying to design systems that decentralize power and that are more democratic, that essentially empower different populations, different sectors of the economy. I think to some degree there will have to be something like identification. And maybe it's not a centralized identification. Maybe it's sort of issued by a smaller group, but perhaps validated across different pluralistic groups. I think if we're going to use tools like that, I don't think we can get away from having any sort of identification. It's just how do you use that without allowing that little piece to be hijacked by interests that do not have the population's interest at heart.
Okay, so like for controlling these technologies, do you think it's best if, for example, a group of professionals, it's also like one view that's thrown around, and it's like a lot of elites are, if you like say that, like they have this perspective that maybe all professionals or like people who are expert in like management and engineering, they should be the ones who decide about the systems? Or do you lean more towards the democratic view, which is like all the people have to participate in the system, even though they don't have the background in this, like in this particular architecture of the system?
So something in between. I think it's not realistic to say everyone could participate on the back end technical skills. And what that means is how do we trust people who have their hands on the back end where they would have the power to put the thumb on the scale? And that's where I think there has to be a mixture of social structures and social incentives along with technology and like smart contracts and things like that, to where it's not that I have to trust the centralized system because that's the only option. And however they're dealing with the back end, I just have to throw my hands up and trust it. Like what I want is options.
So basically, we go back to the idea that maybe we need to have on the front end, the user interface, we need to have a view into the system and how it operates. So are you using Twitter, right? Or no? Do you have Twitter?
I'm not on Twitter,
I
no.
see. Okay. But have you heard about the community notes and this idea about like having basically a way for the people to peek into the system, but also to comment on the system and like maybe give their feedback to the system or to the elites, let's say, or the influencers?
Yeah. I think community notes is one type of model. I think ultimately with some of these platforms, there's things that transparency is not sufficient because just having the information out there's too much information for people to weed through all of it. So there needs to be ways of prioritizing what is looked at closely, what gets the scrutiny, where attention goes. And I think there's going to have to be more complex systems where I can decide, okay, wait a second, this group, based on what they're prioritizing, what they're looking into, how they're collectively thinking about holding accountable the people on the back end, I trust that. And I'm not sure if I trust that group, but that might be kind of a backup group, and I don't trust that group. So having different options for essentially the institutions behind these technologies is what I want.
But also, like right now, we have like problems with digital, is that it's very prone to centralization. So even though like right now we feel like we are in a very good position, at least like compared to the past times where we have this violent wars, like in terms of the life in general is violent. So obviously right now we still have like as recent as World War II, we still have some violence in the world. But like, I mean, in generally, most societies are like, even the enforcement is not very strict, not very violent. It's like mostly soft. So do you think that moving forward, is it going to be, because in digital space, it's very easy to enforce. So do you think that this will, like in general, what is your perspective on the future? Do you think we are moving in a direction where it's more democratic, or is like going to be very dictatorship like, and like the Orwellian, if we say, like what is your perspective? Where is the direction we're moving to? Not the hopeful, but the actual.
So I don't think that's been determined. Like I do think events in the next, say, 5 years or certainly 10 years will determine that. I could see it going either direction. I'm not sure if I agree that violence is not like a major thing in various places in the world. And I don't yet know, will physical violence be what determines the direction, or will it be sort of network violence or the more nudgy types of, they're not violence, like I wouldn't necessarily call them violence, but they're sources of power. And which of those will determine the direction? I don't have an opinion about that yet.
So do you think what do we have to do to ensure that we move in the like positive direction, or like in a direction that's better for all the people? So what do we have to do? What's our role in that?
What's the people's role?
Yeah, I mean, in general, like the rules for the elite and also for the average person, like what do we have to do in order to make sure that, because you say it's like a go either way. So what do we have to do to make to ensure that this digital revolution, or this new upcoming innovations in AI and blockchain and all this moves in the right direction? Like what is everyone's role in terms of elites, and also or the people in the back end and also on the front end?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to have to do with building social networks that sort of bridge the gap between groups who are currently at each other's throat. I think it's going to need to involve like people recognizing, wait a second, it's not the left versus the right, it's not this group versus that group. It's sort of like centralized power versus more democratic power. And the two realms of that are going to be the social realm, like how do you build trust across difference? And the technological realm, how do you build tools that have checks and balances against centralization, against power dynamics, against sort of system power to the powerful properties? And I think those two things are going to have to come together.
Perfect. So, where do people have to go to like learn more about you? Do you have other things that the YouTube channel? Because we will link it below. Is there anywhere that people should go to, or just the YouTube channel?
Mainly the YouTube channel. Otherwise, I'm not on social media too much.
I see, I see. Okay, got it. So, thank you so much for your time today, and yeah, have a nice day.
Yeah, thank you.